Today we're going to talk about how to get a perfect score, a 1600 on the SAT. Alexis Avila here at our office in Wellesley, Massachusetts. For questions or tutoring in person or online, visit preppedandpolished.com or call 781-753-9951. And remember, if you find value watching this video, smash that like button and click the subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications for new videos. Thank you very much. Now let's get right to our video on how to get a 1600 on the SAT. Now, I'm not going to tell you what questions and everything that you need to do to get a 1600 because there's no way for me to know exactly what is going to be on the test, like specific questions, particular passages, or what question number 42 for the writing and language section was. But today what we're going to talk about are what are some of the things that will help you to get a 1600 on the SAT. And for a lot of these things, any one of you can work on these and do, given that you have certain characteristics in terms of your prep process. Now, number one is motivation. Now, this goes beyond the fact that you just want to get a good score, but it's more of what is a good score for you. Is it something that you think a 1600 is within your wheelhouse and a score that your schools are looking for, or that a 1600 is something that you want to aim for, shoot for, and if you get a little bit lower, are you going to be happy with it? Now, usually, in any one of my sessions with a student, I will work toward determining what is your goal. If it is a 1600, that's a high order, and I will have high expectations of that student. Now, motivation's a big one. If a student is coming in and just saying, it'd be nice to get a 1600, I would say, yeah, it would be nice if you could have motivation for it. Now, I find most times that if a student has a very strong motivation, work ethic, or similar, that they can have the ability to score high on the SAT. Now, the next part about getting a 1600 is noticing and working off of a timeline. Now, usually, if I'm dealing with a student who's coming in and maybe not at a 1600, maybe in the 1400s, or they're just breaching into the 1500s, depending on how much time they have to put forth, is pretty indicative of where we can land. Now, if I get a student who's at a 1390 or a 1400, and we have a week before the test, wow, that's a miracle to try and accomplish a 1600. However, if we have someone who's at a 1390, and we have 3 to 4 months to prep for the test, and they have the motivation to work through it, and we can figure out explicitly and pinpoint those areas of necessity that need to be fixed and work towards improvement, it's doable. Now, this kind of brings me into the next point. There are strategies, approaches, and time management that students will need to have to get a 1600 on the SAT. Strategies can include anything from process of elimination in terms of how are you getting rid of answer choices, what are your thought processes. For any of you students out there who I've worked with, what is your reason, what is your validation? For approach, is there a way that you take on sections such as maybe starting with the historical literature first in the reading section versus the literary narrative passage, which is historically the first passage? Or is it something that you're able to manage your time effectively so that the easy questions take less time and your efficiency is quite high, and the harder questions take more time and you're able to get 99% of them? Because this is the thing, if you don't have strong strategies, approach, or time management, it's going to be an uphill battle and very challenging to attain that 1600, which is a perfect score. So if we're looking at time management, this is even more important because you need time to figure out your answers, to potentially go back and correct any answers. Now, most students, I recommend, take at least a little bit of time at the end to just go over some of their questions to ensure they have the correct answers, or if they left any that were between a 50-50 shot, they can go back and determine which answer choice is correct. Again, validation and reasoning. Now, another point to make is your content knowledge. Now, content knowledge is going to be important for both the math section and the writing and language section. Now, students who are aiming for a 1600 and those who can attain that score have already a strong base foundations in both sections. At Prepped and Polished, we take those base knowledges, those foundational elements, and we incorporate more time, practice, and approaches for those questions. But if a student can get 85% to 95% of the material before coming in, it makes it easier than to just pinpoint those small questions that maybe they didn't know about. For example, the equation of a circle or how a dash is meant to be used on the SAT. If it is something that a student makes simple errors or calculation errors, those are sometimes more challenging to predict because they can happen wherever. So getting a strong content knowledge, maybe doing some prep work before tutoring or prep can help with that. And this leads me to my final point. Students who are getting a 1600 put in a good amount of prep. Now, notice how I said amount, not necessarily time. If you're studying for a test, and I ask students this all the time when working with academic tutoring, does it make sense to study for 17 straight hours before the test, the morning, the night before, the morning leading into the test itself? Or does it make sense to plan to effectively review 3 hours, have some dinner, maybe 2 more hours, get a good night's rest, sleep, wake up a little bit early and practice and study for another hour? So it's important to figure that out, because just because you put in copious amounts of time leading into it doesn't necessarily indicate that's going to get a higher score. The reason why we want to space out the prep and give yourself time to prep is so that if it becomes small pieces of information over a long period of time, so it becomes small pieces of information. Now that allows your brain to assimilate it, and if you have a short amount of time trying to cram in as many sessions or practice tests within a week, your brain's actually going to get fried. And most students who are getting a 1600 either know this or have gotten to the point where they just need a little bit more time and they're almost there to get that score. Now, as I said, how to get a 1600 on the SAT, I can't tell you explicitly what questions are on the test that you're going to take, aka which verb is going to be tested on, say, question 33 of the writing and language section, or that the equation of circles always show up on question 29 of the math calculator section. However, if you have a strong motivation, have a timeline in mind, know and can execute certain strategies, approaches, time management, and if you have the content knowledge, and if you're willing to put in time and effort for prep, you're going to get a 1600 or pretty darn close to it. Now, if you're interested in our services at Prepped and Polished and you're trying to aim for that 1600 and you're almost there, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to set you up with a tutor so we can figure out what exactly we can do to help you get that score. Now, good luck on your SAT exam, and I'll talk to you soon.